Some years ago, we made a documentary about Donald Trump. It wasn't flattering. Trump screamed and shouted and threatened lawsuits, and it was never broadcast. But now we think it's time for you to see it, because the new Trump and the old Trump are the same Trump.
I never thought I'd be doing this, I have to tell you. So just everybody have a good time, enjoy yourselves, and for many years enjoy the Trump shuttle.
It seems hard to believe, but that triumphant ride on the Trump shuttle was barely 3 years ago. It feels like so much longer. Nothing marked the end of the 1980s, the decade of greed, more than the downfall of Donald Trump. But who is this man who rose so high and fell so fast?
Very good. Give it to that girl right over there.
He presents himself marvelously, but the Donald Trump that I saw in real life was very different.
I believe that Donald Trump would be a very unhappy man if no one paid any attention to him.
He skirts the law in the sense that he goes right up to the edge and sometimes over it.
You leave it with me.
He talks a good game, but he lacks character.
I mean, it's the American dream gone berserk, really, is what it is.
But it wasn't only Trump's sometime friends and longtime critics who told us about his flaws. Trump himself unknowingly predicted his own fate.
I think one of the most important aspects of the book is I try to find people that don't have it, because most people don't have it, and that's the sad part, and they want to have it, and they go out and they lose their money, they lose their families, they lose everything. And it's a sad situation. But you see it a lot with these hucksters that are on television selling deal books and selling, records, and they never made 10 cents in their lives, but now they become wealthy selling the records, although most of them, if you've read, have gone bankrupt over the last year. So I guess they didn't sell as many records as they thought. But, they sell, and these people put up their $500, and worse than that, then they go out and they borrow money against some leveraged house and this and that. Things that can't work, and I feel very sad for those people.
Donald Trump hasn't had time to feel sorry for anyone in the last year. He's been too busy trying to save himself. It's so different now from his heyday, when he only had to want something to get it. It is easy to see that Trump is in trouble now. His ego is bruised, his empire reeling. But to find out why, you must turn back the clock to look for the clues. We begin our story in the fall of 1988, with Donald Trump at the top of his game. Here he is at a political dinner honoring Andrew Stein, president of the New York City Council.
Trump is a hustler. If a big guy, a rich guy, puts his arm around a politician, often that's better than money, because the politicians are in love with anybody who has money.
Trump puts more than his arm around politicians. He's a frequent and generous campaign contributor to the council president. He is explaining to Stein that the contributions of some of his New Jersey associates are in violation of the new campaign laws. He's going to take them back and fix the problem.
Right down. Andrew, one guy from New Jersey, Andrew Scott. Andrew Scott, if you don't mind, I'll take a pass and get him corrected. You don't mind, eh?
He doesn't miss a beat doing it, nor does he miss a camera turned in his direction.
Boy, there's a lot of coverage tonight.
He was the best-known businessman in America. Compared to Lee Iacocca, he was Schwarzenegger. He was Stallone. Maybe he was even Elvis.
Look, I'm making him a star. Look at this.
He gets more headlines for what he doesn't do than what he does, because he's news just by showing up.
Here he is at a charity event. It's at the Plaza Hotel, then his newest toy. His wife, Ivana, had just had some very appealing cosmetic surgery. Don Johnson and Melanie Griffith were along for the ride. Not surprisingly, the press forgot all about the charity. It was a time when celebrities dominated the news. And thanks to their press agents, the rich were celebrities in the 1980s. Trump in particular. No matter what he said or did, no one asked the hard questions.
In merchandising the apartments in Trump Tower, he would plant articles in the newspaper suggesting that the Prince of Wales was going to take an apartment, Sophia Loren was going to take an apartment, and wouldn't it be wonderful to see Sophia sitting in her bathtub overlooking Central Park, and all kinds of wonderful stories. It's a 58-story building, although if you ask Mr. Trump how tall it is, it's actually 68. He skipped 10 floors in the numbering system because it's much more exciting to live on the 55th floor than it is on the 45th floor. It drove the fire department absolutely crazy because they lost 10 floors in the building that they couldn't find. This is salesmanship, and Trump knows how to do it better than anybody.
It's, as you and I were discussing, it's become the #1 attraction in New York, the Trump Tower. The best hotel casino anywhere in the world. The biggest gross in the history of the gaming business. Said to be the greatest yacht in the world. The finest transportation operation anywhere in this country. The largest building privately financed ever built in the world. The biggest selling book, or one of them, of the decade. The best apartments in the world. This has really turned out to be almost mystical. It's been great.
No area of the news was immune from the Trump hype. When Gorbachev came to New York for a summit in 1988, Trump saw a chance for a PR bonanza.
The week before he arrived, all the television stations in New York said that Gorbachev was planning a visit to Trump Tower. Some of them even printed in the paper that this was going to happen. At no time was Trump Tower even tentatively scheduled as a place for Gorbachev to visit. It's almost a textbook example of a publicity stunt, which worked, and which has worked on many other occasions for him.
Trump also considered himself immune from criticism, even by a Pulitzer Prize-winning architectural critic.
I mean, you have an idiot like Paul Goldberger, who has probably the worst taste I've ever seen. Anytime he gives a good... I get scared when he gives me a good review. Because most of the time when he gets good reviews, they're not successful buildings. But you have a guy like Paul Goldberger who comes in, he's going to fight this job. Why? Because I said bad things about him on my book? Because I said he suffers from a lack of taste? Which he does. Just take a look at the way he dresses.
Trump is possibly the only developer who has sued an architecture critic for a bad review. It was Paul Gapp, the critic of the Chicago Tribune. It was a nuisance lawsuit. It was done just to harass Paul Gapp and the Chicago Tribune. Ultimately, it went nowhere, which is where it deserved to go.
By this time, it seemed Trump could say almost anything about almost anybody.
Do you mind if I sit back a little bit? Because your breath is very bad. It really is. Has this ever been told to you before?
No.
Huh? Okay, then I won't bother. No, actually,
that's how you get the edge.
Who cared about Trump's abrasive behavior? Everybody loved his toys.
For me, a fantasy fulfilled. To leave Donald Trump, the money mogul with the Midas touch, asking, who's been sitting in my chair? Who's been drinking my champagne? And who's been sleeping in my bed? Why, that little old Channel 10 news reporter me. That's who, Sheila Ellen Stevens.
What did you do with it?
No matter what happened then, everybody remembered one thing Donald Trump had done.
Donald, you performed a great public service.
That was on November 13th, 1986, when Trump completed the reconstruction of the public ice skating rink in New York Central Park. For 5 years, the rink had been closed as the city spent $12 million trying to fix it. Then Donald Trump stepped in. He said he'd fix it fast and on budget, and he did. People even thought he'd done it for nothing.
I think it was a level of competence, and we drive and we push and we get things done.
Trump got paid in full. Some of his contractors didn't. And that's a story that didn't get told.
I want you to work, he says, but there's one caveat, and that is that the work has to be pro bono. And I said, well, pro bono, I mean, my goodness, I'm Italian-American. Bono has to be Italian, I'll go for it. Well, little did I know that pro bono meant for free for the public good, but in reality, what he was asking us to do was to supply the services for the rink and to dispense with any profits or expenses.
Back then, Donald Trump was no ordinary rich man. He was the people's billionaire.
You like it? You like it? I'm telling you. Why didn't your daughter bring him home?
Across the street from the skating rink was the St. Moritz Hotel. Trump bought it a year earlier. He called it a brilliant deal. No one bothered to look below the surface. He said he paid $31 million. The real price was $70 million. In 1988, he sold the hotel to Alan Bond, the Australian Donald Trump. Bond paid a whopping $180 million. That, said Trump, gave him a $100 million profit. Conveniently, he forgot to subtract his costs. So, conveniently, did the press. When Trump bought stock, the financial press listened, and the financial press wrote, and people read, and people bought. And Trump sold, and Trump made money. Then came the crash of 1987, and Trump boasted, I got out whole, I didn't lose a dime. And the financial press wrote. But like everyone else, Trump lost. Resorts, Alexander's, MCA, he owned them all, and there were others. Even when Trump flaunted his marital infidelity, editors covered his tracks for him. A professional photographer took these pictures of Trump, his wife Ivana, and his close and personal friend Marla Maples in Aspen over Christmas 1989. He tried to sell them, but for 6 weeks he couldn't find a buyer.
During the 80s, the cult of the rich and of great wealth and of great ostentatiousness was very much in.
He met a need for the press. The press needed a poster boy for the 80s, an emblem, a shorthand way of telling people what was happening in the culture.
But as the new decade began, the poster boy of the 80s woke up to find himself on the media's 10 most wanted list. Although no one had raced to be first with the story of the Trump divorce, there was an Olympic-sized competition not to be last.
The devastating thing about the Marla flap is that it opened Trump to ridicule for the first time, and that is very deflating. And it's not only deflating, but it turns the publicity machine around. All the lovable quirks on the way up look very foolish, if not stupid, on the way down. And it's going to be it's very hard for him to come back from this kind of ridicule.
Overnight, it seems, America turned from a fascination with what Trump has to what he could lose.
Do you wish we'd all go away?
Absolutely.
In the old days, that is just a few months earlier, Trump had the power to dismiss the press, to make reporters accept his claims as facts. Now the press wouldn't go away, and though the stories were about numbers, it was easy to see the numbers were working against him. Look at this chart, which is based on a report from the New Jersey Casino Control Commission. By the middle of 1990, only 3 of Trump's 22 assets were profitable. Trump wasn't rich. His net worth was minus $294 million at the present market value. He owed one bank alone $993 million, only slightly less than the bank had loaned to the entire country of Venezuela. There's nothing the press loves more than bringing down the person it built up yesterday. Once he had been on the cover of Time. When his new book came out, it was reviewed on the back page. And the review was scathing. Inside every fat ego, it starts, there must be a thin, self-revealing book struggling to get out. The review didn't spare his wife either. Was Ivana's plastic surgeon under the impression that she was entering the witness protection program, it asked? But the press alone couldn't slay the media monster it had created. For a moment, the book shot to the top of the bestseller list before disappearing like Judge Crater. In the world beyond New York, he's Donald Trump, self-made billionaire. But in Brooklyn, he's still Fred Trump's son. And in Brooklyn, they remember it was Fred Trump who built the family fortune.
Fred Trump would be here most every day, and he had his sons here. And he was teaching them the business from the ground up. Donald was one of my best customers. He'd have a hot dog most every day. A few occasions he would say to me that this must be a good business. And I'd say, it's a good business, I'm making a living, but I think yours is a little better.
When Fred Trump started out, he built wood shingle houses. During World War II, he constructed homes for the military. When the war ended, using his political connections and little of his own money, he turned his attention to giant developments in New York's outer boroughs. Today, he still owns them.
It was decent, but never good, the service. And the pat answer they give you here at maintenance is, this is not Manhattan. You get Brooklyn service here, whatever that means. I have no idea what that means, but walls have to fall down before you get any kind of service here. I'm just fortunate not to be a senior citizen here.
What happens?
That's where they get absolutely no service at all. Nothing. Because if they move out from their $150 a month apartments, the rent will go up to $600, $700. But they're afraid. See, senior citizens, they're between a rock and a hard place. They're afraid to complain.
Fred Trump taught his son how to be tough. And from childhood on, Donald had his own builder's vision.
He used to build the most beautiful buildings with building equipment, everything. He was great, even when he was a little guy.
Donald was one of 5 children, and while he was adored at home, he was a behavior problem at school.
I was sent to a military academy because I was really a problem. I was a very difficult guy for my parents.
Then at Fordham and the Wharton School of Business, he missed the turbulent 60s.
In 1969, when most other people in their early 20s who were from upper middle class backgrounds at Ivy League colleges were marching and storming the gates, Donald Trump was reading FHA foreclosure notices in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, looking for houses that he could take over and rebuild.
Donald Trump had learned that for many real estate developers, lawsuits are just part of the cost of doing business. Fred Trump was charged twice with making windfall profits on government-financed Brooklyn developments. After the completion of Trump Village, he was forced to return $1.2 million in overestimates, but not before he built a private shopping center on his property. There were more fortunes to be made in Brooklyn, but Brooklyn was comfortable, Brooklyn was boring, and most of all, Brooklyn was his father's turf.
One way to think about Donald Trump is John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever. He's the guy from Ocean Parkway in his mind. Though he grew up with a father who had a lot of money, he grew up in a very middle-class way in his own mind, and certainly crossing the bridge was a huge thing for him to do and something his father never wanted to do.
Trump crossed the bridge. To some, it looked like twilight for the city. But what Donald Trump saw was a bright new dawn.
Donald was the young man the second-generation boy who was going to conquer Manhattan. And he stood with me once in this park after we'd had a tense negotiation in which we'd fought, and as we often did. And he pointed to all these buildings around here, just about here. And he said to me, I'm going to be bigger than Helmsley in 5 years.
Trump made his first move for 2 large sites, a few miles apart and bordering on the Hudson River. They were owned by the Penn Central Railroad, but the railroad was bankrupt, and the properties were up for sale. As Donald Trump saw it, the opportunity was ready-made. The railroad was looking for a developer who was politically connected.
I knew that right away that he didn't fit the standard mold, and that all the people who would have to pass on this, all of them, right up the line, would be troubled if I put it bluntly, who the hell is Donald Trump? And why are we contracting what could be $100 million worth of real estate with this unknown young man?
The 28-year-old Trump would solve the problem brilliantly, as he would in the years ahead. No money down, juggle the facts when necessary, and use your political connections. He took Eichler to meet then-Mayor Abraham Beame.
The mayor put his arm around, after I took a few minutes to tell the mayor why I was there, and he put his arm around Donald's father, and he said to me, whatever Mr. Trump wants in this town, he gets.
He had a very good father who knew how to get things going. He learned a lot from him.
Fred Trump and Abe Beame had been childhood friends, and Beame benefited from large Trump campaign contributions. So did Governor Hugh Carey, who would help Donald Trump again and again. Another close advisor was Trump's lawyer, the notorious Roy Cohn.
Whether he could have done these things without his father's influence or his father's resources, I don't know. I don't think you'd get an ordinary 28-year-old getting options on 3 such magnificent pieces of real estate.
Trump was his father's son. He tried to build federally financed housing on one of the sites. When that failed, he found a new way to get money from the government. With a little help from his friends, Trump got the city's huge new convention center built on his land. I'll give up my $4.4 million brokerage fee, he said, if the city will name the convention center for my father. Everyone thought that was unusually public-spirited, until it was discovered that Trump was only entitled to a fee of less than $600,000. The convention center was named for U.S. Senator Jacob Javits. But the Penn Central also owned the rundown Commodore Hotel right next to Grand Central Station.
I wouldn't have taken the Commodore if you gave it to me. And I didn't know anybody in New York who'd take it if you gave it to them. But one day he looked at me and he said, I'm going to buy the Commodore for $10 million. I'm going to get Jay Pritzker at Hyatt to manage it, turn it into a Hyatt, and I'm going to get Equitable to provide $75 million to rehabilitate it, to the point where it's almost like new construction. I'm going to tear it down to the skeleton and then redo it. And I said, you have really gone crazy.
There was more exaggeration than truth in the way Trump lined up his partners for this project by suggesting he already had the option on the hotel when he didn't. Years later, he'd patent tactics like this, calling them truthful hyperbole. Trump's men went to work obtaining necessary approvals and huge tax breaks designed for construction of hospitals and low-income housing. Lawyer Roy Cohn was on the job, as was Stanley Friedman, a deputy mayor who would soon join Cohn's firm. Years later, in an unrelated matter, Friedman went to jail for his part in one of the city's worst corruption scandals. Back then, the project was approved on the last day of the Beame administration. Trump and his upscale hotel walked off with one of the largest tax breaks in city history, worth an estimated $200 million.
I got everything I wanted. 40 years of tax abatement. People would say, how did you get 40 years? I said, because I didn't ask for 50. It was so easy.
I don't blame Donald Trump for asking for whatever he could. He's a private developer in business to make money. He had no obligation to the city. In fact, he was being helpful because without him, the site might not have been developed. It's up to the city, to the Board of Estimate, to the mayor to stand fast and to negotiate a deal which not only allowed the property to be developed, but was in the best financial interest of the taxpayers for that time and for the future. That the city failed to do.
Trump was no longer a kid from Brooklyn. He was an established developer and something else. He was the king of tax abatements. In the 1980s, other developers would follow his lead until building luxury housing with tax abatements became almost as popular as junk bonds and yellow ties. There's nothing more pleasing to a developer than the words, "no money down." At the Commodore Hotel, Trump saw firsthand the incredible lightness of leverage, so he tried it again. No rundown neighborhood to build up this time, though. It was literally a Tiffany location, adjacent to the famed store on Fifth Avenue in the heart of Manhattan. Here he would build an edifice to himself, a retail atrium, all marble and bronze, 13 floors of offices, the rest expensive apartments. Trump Tower.
Donald called me up one day in my office at about 11:45, said, "Meet me at Bonwit Teller in 15 minutes. Naturally, I dropped everything I was doing and came right over here. The first thing Donald said, "Isn't this the greatest location in the world? We're gonna build the most exciting building in the world here."
If the Hyatt had been a term paper in doing business in New York, the Tower was a doctoral thesis. Here's how it worked. Again, get someone to finance it. Equitable had been in on the Hyatt and owned the land under Bonwitz. For a 50% interest, Equitable would pay him to build. Then get the players who can deal with the city, state, and community. Again, Roy Cohn came on board. Finally, find a way to get approval to replace a 7-story building with a 58-story tower.
Trump was determined to have every square foot he could have, and so the battle began. And it took us 15 months with a lot of shivers up our backs, never knowing whether we were going to win or not win. But Trump is a brilliant taskmaster at maneuvering behind the scenes politically as well as in the real estate world. And he succeeded.
Once again, Trump got millions in tax abatements by finding a loophole in a law designed to promote middle-income housing. To neutralize the opposition in future battles, he soon hired the city's housing chief, who had opposed him on those tax abatements. In 1986, after the building had been completed, Trump broke one of his cardinal rules. He bought out his partner, Equitable, and that cost him money. No matter, it would seem then, if the Hyatt had made him a player in New York, Trump Tower had made him a player in the world.